Yes, team, how are we? Welcome back to another episode of the High Performance Coach podcast. I hope all is good in your world. Today, we thought we'd do something slightly different. The captain, aka Mr. Aaron Crow, aka our head of media inside the High Performance Coach, put up a little story on my Instagram yesterday asking many of you, what do you want to know about Joe Parish across business, life, and also some questionable questions as well that have also come through. So this is going to be a little bit of an ad hoc, off the cuff podcast. We've got an abundance of questions to get through. The captain is going to give them to me one by one. I actually don't know what any of the questions are. I've seen two of them, which were slightly debatable. I'm not sure whether he still included those, but hopefully there's going to be some value in here. So the captain, welcome to the High Performance Coach podcast, mate. How are you? Okay?
Thank you, mate. Welcome. Welcome to me. Yeah, no, it's great to be here. It's been a while, so I'm looking forward to these ones. I've got some abundance of good questions here.
Good, dude. Okay, tell me. Let's make a start. What's first on the list?
Well, what first on the list? We're going to start slightly more serious questions to get to know Joe Parish, is what this is really all about. So we'll get started on those, and then if we've got a bit of time, we'll maybe go into some of the more questionable ones. So to start off, good start. What makes or has made Joe Parish the person who he is today?
I think it's a great question, and one thing that I think about is I went to Spain with Troy and Ben last September, and we actually sat on our veranda having had a barbecue, and we actually debated this question for hours. And again, I think you try to go back as far as you can and look at, why do I behave the way in which I behave? Why do I think the way in which I think? Why do I operate the way in which I do? And I think there's obviously a multitude of differing reasons to why that now may potentially be. One of the biggest things that I really think stands out to me is obviously just, of course, upbringing, my parents, grandparents, and obviously the influence that they obviously had on me massively. I think sport, from a young age, gave me so much in terms of discipline, and taught me so many incredible life skills. And then I think as well, as you kind of grow and evolve, I think it's your own kind of education, what you get exposed to. And then I think it's understanding, you start to pick and choose what it is that you now value. And I think that's obviously been shaped so much by my parents, grandparents, and the incredible job that they have done. But then I think as well, it's your own kind of self-mastery, and then just finding it out for yourself as well. One big thing that I love is some lessons have to be experienced in order for them to be fully understood. And I also think sometimes you have to leave yourself to find yourself. And I think you go through obviously this journey, and then you just start to discover what aligns to you, what doesn't align to you. How do you now see the world? What's important to you? What's not important to you? And I've had a lot of failures, a lot of challenges, a lot of setbacks. I've spent a lot of my time pretending to be somebody that I wasn't, because I felt as though that I needed to conform, and I wanted to be liked, and I wanted to be validated. I wanted to fit in. And then I realized that fundamentally wasn't pleasing me, and I was actually doing myself and those around me a disservice. So I think you've got to be able to leave yourself to find yourself. I think sport, and I also think my upbringing in terms of my family and the love that I had, I think has obviously had a huge influence on why I now behave in the way in which I do. But I think that's an incredible question, and it's something that I think about all the time. It's why do I behave or think the way in which I behave and think? And I think it's this curiosity that I think I'll only continue to explore and look at even more so.
Yeah, no, that's class, because you always think kind of are you on the right path, and are you where you're meant to be? And I just think that that's you always make your own journey, and everyone's is always unique. But that's your story is very unique, and it's a very good one. So, what is your proudest achievement?
I think that I don't even know where to go with that.
You could go down so many ways, couldn't you?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. I think the backing, the belief, and the confidence and the trust in myself to now be able to follow my own path. For me to be able to actually just be okay and be comfortable with destroying and rebuilding the differing identities that I felt as though that I've kind of operated from, because obviously all that I ever wanted to be was a professional footballer, and every single day after school I'd be kicking a ball against the wall, or I'd be out in the park playing football until after dark, until my mum would kind of drag me home. And all that I thought was literally football. And obviously at the age of 16, I had the opportunity to go and play obviously full time, and that didn't quite work out, but what an incredible 2-year experience that was. And obviously being able to let go of that part of my life, then stepping into now what do I do? Now where do I go? I ended up working in Tesco's for a period of time before then obviously heading up to Scotland. And so I think it was just probably more for me actually having the confidence and the backing and the trust in myself to then be able to trust my nose and trust my instinct and back myself in terms of whatever it was that I was now going to go and step into, and realize that actually these things aren't all of me, they're just part of me, and they're actually now making and creating me. And the first person that you now have to please is yourself. And I think the thing that I'm most proud of is actually now being able to love myself and respect myself for who I am, and also for my flaws and my vulnerabilities and the things that I would have previously seen as a negative or something that wasn't good about me. And I think coming to a place of greater acceptance, there's obviously still plenty of work to do, but I think that's been a huge thing of actually now being able to just be myself and be okay with that, and realizing that that's enough instead of thinking that I have to be something or somebody else. I think that's probably my proudest achievement.
Yeah, that's class. Because when I read that question, you can kind of again go down two different ways, and one is the proudest achievement. It's like something you've actually done, Land's End to John O'Groats, or one of those could be
I forgot.
Or even just your surface level things, not necessarily surface level, but like your wedding and things like that. Like it's all kind of things that you could go down, but then actually that I was hoping you were going to go a bit deeper down the route that you just did. So that's class. Who is your current inspiration or favourite person to learn from? Or people?
I don't want this to be like a cop-out answer, but I feel like I learn from everybody. I learn from every single one of our coaches that I have the privilege of working alongside. I learn so much from you. I learn so much from our incredible coaching team. I think when you operate, and I've always been this way, where I'm just incredibly curious, and I will always want to be able to kind of like excavate and take, not in a negative way, but like what I can from individuals in terms of like their traits, their characteristics, what they're now doing incredibly well. Because I think everybody that you get exposed to has an incredible story. They have they have so much to offer. But it's about now being able to allow them to feel listened to, heard and understood, and to be able to, I suppose, then be genuinely curious and ask the right questions. So I think, I learned so much from so many people that I have the opportunity to be interacted, or I get the opportunity to interact with every single day. I've learned, obviously, I give so much of like my growth to like podcasts and books and things like that, and I think there's too many to name. And then also, like for me, Leanne, my granddad, my mom, like I've all had such like powerful and positive influences on me, and I feel like the way in which they conduct themselves, the love and the support, what they've been through, I think obviously for me, like they are like huge like inspirations for me. But I take that from like everybody, in all honesty, because I think if you can trait jack and take bits from everything and everyone you get exposed to, that always has the most like profound and like positive impact, or I have found that's definitely for me anyway.
Yeah, class. And where does your drive to get better come from, would you say?
I think initially it was through insufficiency. I think it was through feeling that I had to prove myself. I felt as though that I had to now be able to like do something or achieve something or have something to now feel worthy, or to now feel like I was successful, or to now feel again like I was being validated by others. So I think obviously initially it was obviously driven through a lot of like fear, insecurity, insufficiency, and that feeling of like not being good enough. And whilst obviously there's still like a degree of that, because I don't think that ever leaves you, I think now it's far more this curiosity again, and this exploration of like, how good can I really be? And one big thing that changed for me, I remember I was actually prepping for a bodybuilding competition. I went to Mallorca with my family in 2017, and I read Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and one thing that he said in there was like one of the principles was start with the end in mind. And that's always been something that stood out for me. Is like I always now kind of look at, right, okay, when I get to the end like, what do I want to have accomplished? What do I want to achieve? What are the things that I would have loved to have experienced and done? How would I love to have challenged myself? And how can I now know that I can sit there with a greater degree of peace now, knowing that I've given it a good go and I put in a good shift? And I think that's probably the most important thing for me. So I think there's a huge desire and drive, and not only that, the ability to now be able to give myself the platform to be the best that I can be, so that I can then hopefully be a lighthouse and also a soundboard and a platform for others as well, to actually give themselves the opportunity to be able to go and be all they can be as well. So I think that's also a massive kind of like driving force for me. It's like, for my own personal selfish endeavors, it's through insufficiency initially, which is still kind of a little bit there. And I don't think that ever leaves you. And I think then off the back of that, it's more curiosity and exploration, and starting with the end in mind. And I have a visualization of like being on a rocking chair as an old man, which I don't even know where that comes from, and being able to look back and just having peace that I know that I gave it my best, to the best of my capacity, with the resources that I had available to me.
Yeah, no, amazing. And that kind of leads on to the next question actually, which is what would your 90-year-old self, just sitting on that rocking chair, what would your proudest achievement be, or what would you hope to have achieved by then?
I think looking back and actually now looking at the connections, conversations and people that I've been able to build relationships with, I think for me, obviously, it's being able to now ensure that the experiences that I have had have been abundant, and I've been able to spend time with the people that I love the most and I value the most, and I've actually been able to be present, and I've been able to actually enjoy those moments, I think, more so than anything else. But being able to look at the relationships that I've built, and hopefully the positive impact that I've now been able to have in some way, small like shape or form.
Yeah, no, brilliant. And now we kind of go into a bit more business, a bit more of the HPC and kind of where you've done in the business side of things. So have you ever felt imposter syndrome whilst building the HPC?
Yeah, continuously. I think when I first became the coach's coach, I basically questioned myself, like, who am I? Who do I think that I am to be in a position to now be able to coach coaches? I had the narrative of like, people are fitter than me, stronger than me, are more successful than me, that have got more letters after their name than me, that make more money than me, like insert all these different things. I felt like a massive imposter at that moment in time. And even every single time that you grow or you go to a new level, I think if you don't feel like an imposter, then fundamentally you're not now growing and or challenging yourself, because every single time you get to a new level, there's obviously going to be a new set of rules. There's going to be a new game to play, and obviously you've not been exposed to those conditions previously. So I think you're always going to feel like an imposter initially. But most importantly, it's about now looking at that through the lens of, this is an opportunity, because I now know that I'm growing and I'm stepping into that domain, and seeing actually how can I learn and what can I build and what am I able to gather from this, and how is this improving me, and then how can I use the previous data, the previous evidence, the previous bright spots of what I've been able to do in other areas of my life to now be able to obviously build that consistency and also that confidence, which I think needs evidence, which is you doing what you say that you're going to do. So do I still feel like an imposter at points? Absolutely. But for me, that's just a good sign, because it now means that I'm evolving and growing and stepping in to something new and almost going into uncharted territory, which I just have to view openly. Don't get me wrong. Is it challenging? Is it hard? Is that little devil that sits on your shoulder that's basically saying you're going to get found out, you're not good enough, like, what do you think that you know, you don't know enough, like all these things? Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think it's about trying to get rid of those. I think it's just about recognizing that they're like clouds. Those feelings and thoughts are going to come and go, but it's what you do with those obviously has the biggest influence and has the biggest impact. So to answer your question, yeah, pretty much all the time.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, no, that's amazing. I'm sure a lot of people can kind of relate and probably going to take great value from that, so that's good. Where do you see the HPC in 10 years' time?
I think our kind of vision and mission for the High Performance Coach is to raise and elevate the standards of the fitness industry. We want to now be able to build the centre of excellence for coaching, and we now want to be able to ensure that we can create the greatest, strongest platform for coaches to be all they can be. as a person, as a coach, as an athlete, in whatever their physical endeavors are, and also as business owners. And for them to be able to trust themselves, back themselves, and for them to be able to actually be authentically themselves, and then for them to be able to have the opportunity to have the space, the environment, the education, the support, for them to be able to now go and live in alignment with what success really means to them. We don't want to shape and mold our coaches into like what we think they should be. We just want to give them the platform to be able to take them as far as they now want to go in alignment with what they really want. So that's obviously our greatest priority, and we want to be able to go upstream. So we don't just want to look at the coaches that have been in the industry 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 years. There is obviously a bigger vision in terms of us being able to go more upstream and have a bigger, more positive influence, more at that kind of like beginning stage. But right now, being able to create a space where people feel like they belong, they feel like they are listened to, heard and understood, and they can get the coaching and the support and the platform for them to be able to get the very best out of themselves, which as a byproduct is going to allow them to impact, help, transform more people that are obviously around them. And it's that kind of ripple effect or that domino effect. And I think that's the kind of infinite game for me. It's not, numbers on a screen, or it's not total number of clients, or it's not, X amount of results in terms of like that thought process. I think it's more the feelings that are incalculable. That I think that's the most important thing. Are there metrics and targets that I want to hit 10 years? Maybe, like, I don't have clarity over that because it's a long way away. But definitely the next 1, 3, 5, absolutely. But they mean absolutely nothing without meaning, and without us now being able to ensure that we're doing this the right way in alignment with our values and not compromising on those for us to now be able to reach those, which is obviously the most integral thing.
Yeah, no, class. And how did you find bringing in a second coach to the HPC? I know you've got a bigger team now, but even just bringing that first person in, how did you find bringing another team member in and the unknowns that kind of come with that?
Yeah, I think twofold. Obviously, before I had the high performance coach, I had an incredible experience with obviously working with 4 other coaches under the Team J Physique brand, and that was amazing because they were incredible human beings. I had so much love for them. They were all my clients, 4 of which are still inside now inside the high performance coach as coaches. And like that experience for me in terms of just that team, the connection, the collaboration, like was unbelievable. We operated from a slightly different model then, whereby obviously we operated under the Team J Physique umbrella, and then obviously they would have their own kind of coaching clients obviously under kind of that name. Whereas now obviously with the way in which we kind of run, again, it's about building a team of specialists. So every single coach that comes into the program gets exposed to obviously the greatest specialists inside their domain, so that we can now provide them the greatest level of support. So when it was time to bring in Troy initially, well, first and foremost, when I thought about it, I didn't even know who I was going to bring in. Because you tell yourself this story of like, nobody can do this as well as me, nobody gets it, nobody understands, like they're not going to want to work as hard as me, insert all these feelings and thoughts. And that was just my ego that was just holding me back. And yeah, it did take me a few months to be able to find the right person, and that was based upon will, not necessarily skill. Now Troy is incredibly skilled, but that wasn't the thing that initially now attracted me to him. It was more his character, it was more his will, his desire, his honesty, integrity, his work ethic, and the relationship that we're able to create. And initially, you do have to relinquish control. You do have to now be able to let go, and you have to now allow yourself the opportunity to realize that there are people that have far greater superior strengths to you, and they see the world in a different way. And that now is a positive thing, because ultimately if you can now do that and you can create this culture in this environment which is centered around honesty and like confidence in conflict, and you can have these powerful conversations, it means that you're really leaving no stone left unturned. You're being able to see a different perspective because you don't know what you don't know. You normalize your norms. So bringing somebody else in initially was a little bit of a challenge, because your ego takes a hit and you're thinking, how's it going to go down with the clients, etc. But it was the best thing that I ever did. It was something that I wish that I don't wish I did it sooner actually, because I felt as though that obviously it was in alignment, it was right. And I think one big challenge that I see is actually, alone so many coaches are actually taking on other coaches far too quickly, and their business isn't in a place for them to be able to actually do that. And I think that then needs to challenge. But it's now going to be the time, the nurturing, the relationship, and the autonomy that you can now give that individual, and understanding what do they want, what are their needs, what do they now value, what and how is this role serving their future. And ultimately, what do they now want out of this? And that is based upon like different metrics. So for us, we have fun, fulfillment, finance, and freedom. And then just having that awareness is powerful. But yeah, I'm a massive believer in if you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go further, you go together. And if you can bring people in that complement you, that's only going to enhance what you have the capacity and the capability to do. Final thing that I'll add is, I think, going back to that imposter syndrome, you're like, who am I to now bring on an employee? Now all of a sudden you've got, you've obviously now got wages, you've got pension contributions, you've got national insurance, you've got all these different things that you're now fundamentally responsible for. And then in my head, I'm still like this little boy who's kicking that ball against the wall, and got into coaching because I love training and I had an innate passion for physique development at the time. So I think obviously that was also an initial challenge, because again, you realize it's not just this hobby or this just like one person show. Actually, you've got this greater responsibility. So that was definitely a shift in my identity that also took a period of time. But again, was the best thing that I've now done. And of course, it's grown and evolved since then.
Yeah, brilliant. And what would you say is your biggest struggle in starting a business?
I think initially was, I still remember the day that I rang my parents, and I told them that basically off the back of me finishing my dissertation, I wasn't going to basically get a job, and I was just going to carry on this kind of online coaching thing. And my stepdad was basically, I remember him basically being like, well, listen, like, when are you going to get a real job? Like, when are you going to stop doing this thing? Because it's like, it's not going to serve your future, it's not going to do this and not that. And that came from a place of love, and we talk about it all the time, we joke about it quite a lot, even now. So I think obviously for me, it's actually knowing that the first person that that has to now believe in it is you, because others around you aren't necessarily going to get it. They're not going to understand. They want to keep you safe. They want to protect you. They are obviously now putting their perception of the world and their beliefs and their values onto you, and that's not a bad thing in any way, shape or form. If anything, that can bring awareness, but most importantly, it's about you now inherently backing you, and just now giving yourself that question to that questioning of, well, what if it does fail? What if it doesn't work out? Well, what's the worst that can happen? What's the best that can happen? And it's almost just, let's just fuck about and find out. And you've got to, of course, be calculated with the risk that you take, depending upon your current circumstance. But I think for me, it was just that innate backing and confidence and belief in myself. I didn't know how I was going to get there. I didn't know what even running a business was. I didn't even know really a lot, I'll be honest with you. It was just more, I had this passion, this desire, and this drive to be able to solve a problem. I knew that I could impact people, I knew that I could help people, and I was just going to follow my nose and trust my instinct. And it started to build, develop and grow, and again, you just learn as you go. So I think that was it for me. It's like, people aren't going to understand, people will mock, people will judge, people won't get it, and that's okay. They're not supposed to get it. And I think the power of them finding people that do get it is one of the most incredible things that you can do, because that sense of belonging, connection, and also that leadership that can bring, and the journey that's already been kind of paved in front of you, can give you so much hope. So I think, yeah, for me, it's just, if you've got an idea, you've got a problem that you now believe that you can solve, and you've got something you want to be able to bring to the marketplace, it's like, well, I go back to the 90-year-old self or the 8-year-old self sat on that rocking chair. It's like, would I regret not having just taken that leap? Because in 1, 2, 3 generations time, nobody's going to know who you are anyway. So it's like, well, actually, do you know what? I might as well just trust myself, back myself, and just find out. And you're going to fail forward fast and learn through the process. And it's actually, in hindsight, going to only probably make you better. And that's probably going to be the next stepping stone that will step you onto the next thing. So yeah, nobody's going to get it. Back yourself, trust yourself, and follow through.
Got you. How did you know it was a time for a change within J Physique to the HPC?
I talk about this quite regularly with a lot of coaches around obviously like changing niche and changing their market. And I got to a point whereby like bodybuilding and physique development fundamentally changed my life in terms of like what it gave me. I still massively value and appreciate and love that so much. But I reached a point whereby I was coaching so many incredible people through body transformations, but I'd done it for so long and I had done so much of it that my passions and what I was curious about and what I was interested in and what I'd now been through had started to shift, alter and change, and I felt as though that I could give so much more to the marketplace. I also had evidence because I was working with some coaches at the time and I was seeing their struggles, their challenges, what they were going through. I'd obviously been the guy that got in great shape, neglected my business, built a great business, neglected my body shape, health and performance, built a great body, built a great business, respective to obviously myself and my circumstance and what I felt was obviously good and great. And neglected my relationships, and then I realized that there wasn't really anybody that was out there that was now coaching coaches within the domain of not just physique, not just business or life, but actually now how they can now really start to cultivate and do it all, because it is difficult, it is challenging, and like one focus and just doubling down on that, I believe obviously can bring short-term success and incredible impact and fulfillment, but over the long term obviously we all have different values and different roles and responsibilities. So I wanted to be able to now bring something that I knew I'd been through, I'd experienced, and I knew that I needed that wasn't in the marketplace. And that was the day that I was walking around the field that's near my house with Lola, and I was just questioning everything. I was like, why do I feel bored or bad? Why do I feel guilty? Why do I feel so lost? Because I've got all these incredible clients. I've been able to get these fantastic results. I have got great experiences, great freedom. Financially, at the age of 25, I was far further ahead than what I ever thought that I would ever be. And I had everything, if not more than I ever wanted. But I just felt like I lacked this fulfillment and this peace, and I knew that I wanted to give more, but I didn't know what, where or how. And that was really the transition and the change for me. And I realized that I could stay exactly where I was and I could keep doing that for another 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 years, but I'd be doing those people a disservice because I wouldn't be in it. And I think that for me, that wouldn't feel aligned. And again, it goes back down to that, like, well, actually, with my future self, thank my current self for the behaviours and decisions and choices that I'm now making. So that was when I realised I had to destroy, rebuild strategically to then be able to step in, because I needed that passion, that desire, that drive, that energy. And I now needed that new North Star to be able to work towards, because I felt as though that I had so much to offer, because my life changed so much. And one great thing that I heard Jay Shetty say on a podcast was that so often, and I might potentially butcher this, you get into something, you do something, you become a somebody within a certain domain, and then you almost feel as though like you become a puppet, because obviously you now put these pieces of content out to the world, and you've built this business in this certain way. You now believe that obviously others like you obviously for that reason, and so you now feel as though that you have to keep doing that, instead of actually now realizing the first person you have to now please is obviously yourself. So being able to realize and appreciate that you can destroy and rebuild and you can start again at any point, I think was a really, really powerful thing for me, and realizing that the first person that had to be fulfilled and be happy and be challenged in a positive way was myself.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I even think that it's so valuable for even people outside the coaching industry as well, like changing their niche and things like that. Even people that are lacking fulfillment in their careers and things like that, etc. That is just so valuable as well.
I think, mate, just like there's always going to be uncertainty. Like there's always going to be uncertainty in whatever you do. Like, but it's not about now trying to eradicate that. And some people value certainty on different levels of this, like the scale. But I think, as always, it's about then how do I now mitigate the risk? How can I be as strategic as possible? How can I gather and collate as much evidence as possible? Who do I now need to get support from? And realizing that there's always going to be a degree of uncertainty. And that's okay, and that's not something to be fearful of. So often the fear is telling you exactly where you need to go.
Yeah, no, definitely. So off a little bit of the HPC now, and into if you couldn't be a coach or anything to do with anything to do with fitness, what would you do?
Be a full-time dog dad. No, I honestly, when I was obviously in this kind of like limbo mode between finishing football and then obviously still trying to get other contracts, and I was working in Tesco's for a little while, I rang my old PE teacher, who was an incredible bloke, and actually I messaged him on WhatsApp about 6 months ago, just literally thanking him for the impact that he had on my life. And again, that goes back down to like, you know, like people don't remember kind of like what you said or, you know, what you did. They remember obviously how you made them feel, and he was somebody that had such a huge influence on me in terms of just giving me so much in terms of like leadership, some powerful lessons in terms of like how to coach, even then, that I didn't even realize that I was taking. And I remember calling him, and I was actually exploring obviously like how would I become a PE teacher, because he was almost like a massive inspiration and role model for me. So I think if I didn't get into coaching, like, would I maybe go down the PE teacher route potentially back in the day?
What about outside of fitness?
But outside of fitness, honestly, I honestly couldn't even tell you. Like, I've never even thought about it, because my life has so been completely centered around that I couldn't even consider what I would now do out with that. Yeah, even now. Yeah. You know?
Yeah. And I think that's probably a testament to how kind of you are living your happy life and your rich life, and a testament to how like you don't have any doubts of what you're doing. It's exactly where you want to be, and if it's not where you are, it's still within fitness and you're incredibly passionate about that, which is cool. What has been your toughest challenge you've had to overcome when training for a fitness goal?
I'll probably use my first ever one, which was I was prepping for my first ever bodybuilding competition. I didn't have a clue what I was doing. I literally had like 20 foods on a Word document written out that I put on my fridge that had the protein on it and had the calories on it. And it was like chicken, beef, tuna, steak, white rice, brown rice, white potato, sweet potato, oats. Fats were nuts. And I think that was literally it. And eggs. I had eggs in there as well, obviously, on the protein. And I lived in a house with 3 other lads. And I basically did a bodybuilding prep where I pretty much just took myself to the absolute extreme. I didn't know what I was doing. Nobody else around me kind of had ever experienced that. And I obviously absolutely battered myself in the process. I got insanely shredded. And I was fortunate enough to obviously win that competition. But about 4 weeks before, this actually comes on to the Dan Reeve question. About 4 weeks before,
which I've left out.
About 4 weeks before, I actually ended up getting piles, and it was like the most excruciating, horrific pain that I'd ever experienced, and I felt so vulnerable. I felt so weak. I was obviously incredibly hungry. My relationship with food obviously was not positive at the time, and of course, like, I felt obviously not at my best anyway. And so when that happened, obviously I was 4 weeks away from a competition. I was more than ready because I didn't know what I was doing. It was just how quickly can I get shredded. And I was just like, what am I going to do? Because now I'm not going to be able to train. I'm going to go backwards. I'm going to, you know, like this fear set in. And I remember having to sit on the couch for a week because I couldn't train. I couldn't do anything. And the only reason that I was actually able to do that, otherwise I would have carried on, was I was training alongside an Olympic swimming coach at the time who just loved training with me. And he basically just said to me, like, Joe, if you were one of my athletes right now, I'd be telling you to go and chill out and go and do absolutely nothing. Your body is telling you that you have an incredibly high level of obviously stress at this moment in time, and you now going and pushing harder is only going to make things worse and actually going to be a detriment to you. So if it hadn't been for him and the trust I had in him, I probably would have carried on. But that was the hardest week ever because I didn't know, I had no experience. And then lo and behold, actually 7 days later, I looked even better. I had even more energy. And actually, I think that was the catalyst that I think then allowed me the opportunity to really progress in the last couple of weeks and make even more progress, was because I was able to actually rest and recover. But in that moment, I just remember feeling so low, so vulnerable, and just so unsure. And also quite alone in that moment as well, because as a 20, whatever it was, lad I was, Telling obviously others that your bum hole had fallen out was obviously not at the top of the agenda, and not something that you readily do. So I think that was probably one of the biggest challenges, and also getting released from professional football as well, because I remember the day they pulled me into the office and said, "Nah, mate, sorry, you've not made it," and I just felt as though that I'd just let my parents down, who had just travelled the length and the breadth of the country, given up absolutely everything, and pumped so much into me, and just not getting that contract. I felt guilty. I felt as though that I felt like I'd let them down, but of course I hadn't. So I think that was probably the other one as well for me, just realising.
Do you believe that strength and endurance can coexist?
Oh yeah, 100%. I think it's ultimately now coming back down to the strategy of it though, because what happens is typically most people will then try and do strength at 100% and endurance at 100%. But if you do strength and endurance to 100%, you then have 200%. Therefore, your recovery capabilities and your recovery demands obviously are not going to be supportive of those, and the adaptations aren't going to be able to occur because you're going to be constantly in the red. So the biggest and the most important thing is like understanding, well, what is the goal, and then being able to reverse engineer off the back of that. And there's always going to be obviously push and pulls and different phases of like prioritization, and I think it's about strategically planning obviously around those. You've obviously got like the recovery modalities, you've potentially got like when's the best time to train in terms of like optimization. But even if I look at myself, it's like I train for consistency, not optimization, just because of work and other things that now take even more of a priority. So can it happen? Absolutely. I think it's about now making sure that obviously you're just managing total volume. You're being strategic in terms of like what you're working towards, and you're not trying to be at 100. You're not trying to do 100% training like resistance split and also 100% endurance program, because otherwise you're not going to be able to recover from those demands. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that I made, and also a big challenge that I see with so many people trying to do that, and then they don't have the energy and or they can't really progress to the level that they would now like to. And of course there's so much more intricacy that I could go into, but to kind of answer the question, absolutely, if strategically done properly, you can make some incredible newbie gains initially, but off the back of that is then going to be the finer margins of being strategic in your approach, most importantly.
It makes perfect sense. How do you fit everything in? So running a business and alongside your high performing fitness?
I think you've got to find your edge. So again, like I've had to obviously go through the lessons, experiences of finding out what's actually too much, and you have to find out the hard way. And then in doing so, you obviously then learn what's worked, what hasn't worked, and then basically what are the signs and what are the red flags that allow you to realize that you've gone too far. I think off the back of that is then understanding, well, what's the priority right now? So for example, obviously a huge focus and a huge priority right now is the coaching, the business, and that's obviously at the top of the priority list. And then I've obviously got the health, family, relationships, and the other fun that we obviously like to have. So it's about then looking at where do I put those rocks in, and then what am I okay with compromising and or sacrificing for a period of time. A lot of my life is highly automatic and systemized in terms of I'll typically eat the same things like breakfast and lunch. I'll train at the same time. Me and Leanne obviously have regular daily walks and meetings around like where we are, what we value, what we want to do, where and what we're willing to give, etc. At different periods. And then I think also the biggest thing for me is, like I say this all the time, it's like it's the people around you that make you out to be better than you actually are. So obviously having Leanne, having my mum, who's our kind of like head of admin and like all things client relations, having obviously the captain, having Troy, Ben, Jen, Dan, like having these people around you that you can start to trust, that can start to delegate obviously off roles and responsibilities that aren't within your zone of excellence, that allow you the opportunity to spend more time doing the stuff that's going to move the needle for you, I think is one of the biggest and the most important things. So where can we delegate? Where can we systemize? Where can we automate or eradicate? And then how can I then spend my time doing the things that are now going to bring the greatest amount of value, have the greatest impact? And also, I do a lot. So again, there's no getting away from the fact that like I do so much, and I'm okay with that. We would of course love to start a family at some point, and of course then my values I suspect are going to change and what I do and how I do it. But right now at this stage and at this phase in my life that I'm in, I'm just trying to now like optimize for fulfillment and what I feel as though is most important for me at this moment in time.
Yeah, no, perfect. Right, I'm very cautious of time, so we're just going to run through these last few questions, which are slightly more light-hearted, and we can maybe just limit to, kind of quick fire kind of questions. So, why do you dislike Bulgarians?
I don't dislike Bulgaria. I don't dislike Bulgarians, but I think it's probably one of the most challenging exercises that psychologically you have to prepare yourself for. And when you kill yourself on one leg, and then you know that you've got to go and do exactly the same and bury yourself on the other, it's just that kind of like that moment where you drop the dumbbells for a couple of seconds. You're like, oh my god.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's probably it more so than anything.
No, you're definitely not alone on that one. I'm sure you can guess who asked this question. What you having for your tea today?
That's a regular. But just to give some more context to that, every single night in the High Performance Coach team chat that we have, one thing is we literally just all send over a photo what we're actually having for dinner, and that's just a common question. So, mate, to answer your question, I actually don't know, but it's on the food board downstairs.
Right. I'm sure it's something lovely. Anyways, what is your favourite food?
I don't think I have one. I love so many. I love food. I just love experiences, and I love actually food, but actually the connections that come along with food as well, with the company that you have. I think enjoying a good meal with good company and people, I think it's more about the experience. So I don't necessarily think it's the food. I think it's more than the environment, the people you're also with, I think is the thing that makes it for me. So I know it's a bit of a cop-out answer, but I can't give you like a definitive one. Also, Leanne is an unbelievable cook. So I think there's so many things that I could decide.
Good. Yeah. What's a food that you dislike that most people like? If there is one.
Mushrooms. Is that a thing? Yeah. I think a lot of people always think I'm a bit weird because I don't like mushrooms. Oranges. I'm not an oranges man.
That's the answer there.
I'm an oranges man, mate. I'm not an oranges man. Sorry.
Right. Everyone likes oranges, but JP. What is your bedtime story?
A bit of context. So that story of me and Jack Wilson, an incredible friend and somebody who's been in the program for a long time now. We did a 70.3 Ironman a few years ago, and it was the first one we'd ever done. We were in a caravan, and we were sleeping in these hobbit beds, and we were so nervous and apprehensive about having to get up at 4 a.m. the next day to basically go into the Weymouth Sea and go and do an Ironman for the first time. And I don't even know where it came from, but I just started telling Jack a bedtime. I just started telling Jack this random bedtime story. Now ever since I think he's actually got it on film. So he just always holds me to that.
Yeah. Who do you think would win in a fight between the Kebab Kings, Ross and Grant?
I think Ross would outrun Grant, but I think Grant would outsquat Ross. So honestly, I don't. Mate, that's
be one to watch.
It would be one to watch, mate. It would be one to watch for the Kebab Kings.
What is your max heart rate on a tune-up on a Monday?
Yeah, pretty high. I have to say, I'm not gonna lie. Probably far greater than the 5k PB that I did yesterday. I reckon my tune-up heart rate must be anaerobic.
What size sports bra do you wear when you run?
Double D's.
Double D's. And what's the last one we've got? I think that's everything actually. I think we'll wrap it up there.
Nice. Have you got any questions you want to ask, or is that enough questions from the question master?
No, I mean I've got a lot, but I'm cautious of time, so I think we'll maybe have to do a second part at some point, and we'll think of some.
Yeah, good mate. Did you enjoy that?
Loved it.
I enjoyed that as well. It's actually quite nice not having to think about what you're going to talk about and just ask questions. Very good questions as well, mate. I have to say.
And I think once people listen to this and maybe. I anyways have a lot more follow-up questions, so I'm sure many other people do. So if no one else wants a part 2, I do. So we'll do it again at some point.
Team, I appreciate you. Thank you so much. If you found any value in the podcast, then I would of course love to hear from you. Have an incredible morning, afternoon, evening, whatever you're up to. I love you, and I shall speak to you soon.